Here's another piece of knowledge that I've picked up. When you go to replace wear parts like these are the U-joints for that. I mean, they're probably not with my luck, but they were supposed to be, so we'll see if they actually fit. If you're gonna buy these things, these are like $13 a piece, and it's really, really cheap insurance to buy a third one. Now, this ensures that they will never break again because you have the spare ready to go. And the downside is it means that another U-joint somewhere else on this that looks very similar will be what breaks. But they won't be interchangeable, but at least we won't have to fix these two again. Knowing that I'll never have to change these two again, that's worth an extra $13. So let's take this apart. All right, so here's what's really crazy, okay? This hay rake is, of course, ground driven, and that long 1-inch shaft there is the axle which connects the two wheels together, so that way the rake is powered by two wheels instead of the one wheel that's just right by the gearbox. Okay, that's how they built it, obviously. That's how I kind of wanted to keep it, but unfortunately, the deeper into this I went, the more problems I found. I found out that the yokes are badly damaged. I found out that some other driveline components on that side were kind of messed up. So instead of shelling out a whole bunch of money and time and effort to fix all that stuff, I was like, well, wait a minute, why does this even need to be powered by both wheels? Because, I mean, it's heavy enough that it should be able to get enough traction just off the one side. And so I left the axle off here and I tried it out, and you know what? It worked flawlessly, okay? So I came back and I deleted all the parts that allowed it previously to be driven by both wheels, so now it's only driven by the one wheel. And yeah, there's no reason why it needs anything more than that. I've used this to rake windrows so huge that I can barely get the tractor over them, and it still works perfectly fine. So yeah, I don't know why they made it more complicated than it needs to be. I mean, like I said, there's absolutely no reason why it needs power from both wheels. One is more than sufficient. So yeah, I just deleted all those parts. It's kind of cool because they can never break again since they no longer exist. And yeah, the hay rake still worked awesome after that. You know, I would say conservatively, to pick a nice safe number, if you're using either brand new equipment or stuff that was thoroughly gone through at the start of the season, you know, fully maintained, wear items replaced as needed, whatever, I would estimate that from my own experience, for every 3 hours in the field, there's a minimum of 1 hour in the shop. And when you're putting, like, I don't know, a lot of hours on stuff, that really adds up. This is a bonus problem we also get to fix because there's just not enough broken stuff around here. This is the main problem with my farming operation, just not enough broken junk. This is the PTO shaft that snapped off my fertilizer spreader randomly, and as you can see, it is stuck inside the, this is one of those ratcheting deals here. It's stuck inside the ratcheting thing. This does not go here. Oh, I cannot get it out. Oh. Ah, and my glove ripped. Free. I want to be able to apply hammering force on this evenly, but I don't have a socket big enough. Well, yeah, big enough or deep enough. You know, personally, I think it's a mystery how anyone, anywhere, manages to farm full-time without having a full-time mechanic. That is really on there. You're supposed to be able to actuate this in just with your fingers. Don't tell me I need another PTO shaft now. Oh. Man, that is stuck. It's stuck around this point. You know, it certainly didn't help that this flat part that you grab onto got all banged up flopping around behind the tractor, you know, for those few seconds before I could actually shut the PTO off after it broke. I might just have to get another PTO shaft, quite frankly. It really sucks because this, I don't know, only has maybe a few hundred hours on it. And I don't know, maybe 200 hours. got a lot of life left to give. But stuff just won't stop breaking. I don't want to break these pliers too. Why won't this ring come out of here? All right, well, here we are coming up on an hour later, and I finally got this thing apart. This section, it's not right. I was able to straighten it out so it's more or less functional. This is not the PTO shaft for these spreaders. This is the PTO shaft off of my drum mower, which is also broken. And the only reason it's on here is because I bought a standard 3-point broadcast spreader, and the included PTO shaft does not work with the somewhat standard hitch, 3-point hitch on the back of the tractor. Therefore, I had to steal one off of the drum mower, and I finally got this thing apart. The bad news is, for some reason, this thing was, this snap ring was really locked in there. I don't know if it's like painted in place or what, but you can see it's a little lopsided now, and that's because it's bent. So now I have to order one of these, but that's not that big of a deal. You know, I could probably find one of those on the internet. I've never had to buy one before, so that should be fun. Anyway, I got that. This is what's left of the PTO shaft. And keep in mind, this is on pretty much a brand new piece of machinery. You know, you can see where it's sheared right there. I know from my time reading comments that there's always a bazillion people who are like, oh, you know, truck 2009, it's too stupid to do anything. But, you know, the reality is I don't think I would be, with all of my metalworking experience and knowledge, I don't think I'd be able to induce a failure like that if I wanted to, at least without taking the entire gearbox apart and like welding stuff solid. Like I said, it's a major battle just to keep the wheels on things. And this is with brand new equipment, and the stuff that isn't brand new, it has gone through meticulously. And like I said, every 3 hours in the field is a minimum of an hour in the shop. But whatever the case, yeah, I can't really put that back together until the new snap ring gets here. So I guess that means it's time for the hay rake. Wasn't that what we were working on before? I don't know. Do you guys want a $1 million idea? Well, this is how you come up with it. You make a website where, you know, typically one of the great things about the internet is whatever kind of random part you need, you just go on there, and there's some hole-in-the-wall warehouse in some suburban, you know, Midwestern city that sells whatever that one specific kind of fastener is. And you know, you just buy the one thing, they drop it in an envelope, you have it in 3 or 4 days, and it's just done. I'm not aware of anyone who does this with retaining rings or snap rings or snap clips, whatever people refer to them as, because I'm trying to replace that one. It was all cattywampus like I showed you guys. And I don't think there's a single place on the internet that does that. I looked around the usual suspects like Granger and McMaster-Carr, whoever they are, and I only found snap rings that I think are this size. I don't actually know because it's not really clear how they measure them. But assuming they measure them the way I measured them, I can get them. The bad news is it's only like $68 for a pack of 10 plus whatever they charge for shipping and tax. And I don't even want 10 of these things. So the other thing I did is I got on eBay and I looked around for the places that'll sell you stuff like straight from China. They have these things really cheap. The problem is they also don't tell you the way in which they measure them. They tell you the size, but they don't tell you if it's the groove size or if it's the shaft size or some other kind of size. And so I figured I could take the shotgun approach on this and order like 4 or 5 of these little packs. The bad news is, in order to do that, it would cost as much money as just replacing this part of the PTO shaft. For the life of me, I cannot understand why anything needs to be this difficult, but it is. So what I've decided to do is we're just gonna farmer fix this. Since this PTO shaft, it's never coming off the mower until it needs to be replaced. We're gonna do this the way a lot of old farm equipment used to work, like 1930s style, which is instead of being held in place by this mechanism that you just actuate with your fingers, this is the high-tech way to do it. There's a bolt or a pin that runs through the PTO shaft and through the coupler and holds it on there. So isn't that gonna break? Not really. There's not really any back and forth force on it because the PTO shaft can expand and contract at will. So really it's just holding it on there. And the reason this system was done away with is it requires tools anytime you want to hook up or unhook a PTO shaft. But it's cheap, it's strong, it works. And I cannot understand why things need to be this difficult. Also, with the New Holland rake, this was kind of a disaster. I tried to get the old U-joint out of this, and you can see how well that went, so that's nice and fun. And then I came over to this side, and you can see this type of U-joint does not use retaining clips on the outside. That's just not rage-inducing enough. Instead, they put them on the inside, and as you can see, they're covered with probably 60 years of rust, and I cannot get them to budge. You know, I do my best to be pretty positive in these videos for you guys, but I gotta be honest, that job and everything about it from start to finish was simply awful and as difficult as it could have possibly been. Literally everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong, and there were even a bunch of problems that I did not foresee. So it went exactly the same as everything else. It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. Anyway, let me show you this because I think it's on here pretty well now. I was able to drill through this. I thought when I first considered putting this pin in here that it might be difficult to drill through this PTO shaft, but I really didn't think it would be that bad, considering that the minimum suggested horsepower for this mower is I think 35 or something. When it's something that's designed to not have a lot of power through it, I figured they probably would not spend that much time and energy and money hardening this PTO shaft. But this thing was made in Chesnea. It is European quality. And I was wrong about that. This is why I love buying stuff from Eastern Europe anytime I have the point. Well, usually. In this case, it made this job exceedingly miserable, but after breaking off, I believe 4 drill bits, I got through here. Now, one thing to note is anytime you put a pin in something like this, it's important from what I know about this, and I'm not an engineer or whatever, to leave it a little bit loose. Now you can see that can move in there. This is a lock nut, so it shouldn't back off. And the reason why we leave it loose is because every time this engages or hits a bump or anything else, it's kind of hard to simulate because this is that ratcheting mechanism, but this collar moves against that shaft, you know, a handful of thousandths of an inch, and if you put it tight, then that's going to be binding against this pin. As is, every time that happens and this moves relative to the shaft, it can move all at once. It stops on these splines before it stops on the bolt, and all the bolt does is to keep it from going yonder ways. Anyway, there's 2 other problems we have to fix with this mower. One is that this thing, which holds on the tool that you use to change blades with, is made out of plastic for some reason. This is one of the only things I don't like about the mower, and the plastic is splitting, so I don't want to lose this tool. We better change that. And the brand new hydraulic cylinder I put on last year needs to be replaced. But first, I'm gonna have some dinner. Such is farming. Okay, I feel a lot better. Now, the next thing to do is hopefully install this hydraulic cylinder on the drum mower, because this is my 3rd season with that mower, and it is now therefore time to install the 3rd hydraulic cylinder on it. Why are we going through a cylinder per year, you ask? Well, the first year when I got the thing, the people at the dealership did not set the machine up properly, and the hydraulic cylinder that picks up essentially the deck on this thing, it's a single acting hydraulic cylinder, at least it is from the factory. So there's a breather on one side of it, and the breather is supposed to go down, but they didn't put it facing down, they put it facing up, and then we got like probably 60, 80 inches a year of rain, and that goes in there and causes a whole bunch of rust and pitting and completely destroys it. So I went to a big box store, pretty much the only one who you can think of that sells hydraulic stuff, and I bought a replacement cylinder for it. It's not really the right size. So I had to make this little
doohickey out of scrap metal to kind of bridge this gap here, but it worked and it got me back in the field in the space of like a day. So that is the good news. The bad news is, the first time I went to use the mower this year, I go to raise and lower the deck on this thing with this nice shiny looking almost brand new hydraulic cylinder, and out the breather on the bottom of this, you know, the vent is just going blah, there's all this nasty brown filth coming out of that thing. And now the cylinder will not compress fully. It stops like, you know, a handful of inches short, and it bleeds down a little bit faster every time I use the mower. So presumably the almost 100 inches of rain we've had between last August and this August coming up has just the humidity from that and the moisture has gotten into, look at this. Yeah, you can see some of the stuff that's sort of coming out of there. I think that's just dust stuck to where the splooge is coming out, but whatever. I think there's just too much moisture and it's getting in there and it is rusting away at the walls on the inside of the cylinder. I don't actually know. All I know is it doesn't work, and so I ordered the hopefully proper cylinder. Hopefully the cylinder is actually the right size, so I won't have to put this thing on here. It's kind of a pain, but you know, that's just the way it is. And that's the last time I put a single acting hydraulic cylinder on anything. I really think there's just too much water here to not destroy the inside of the cylinder. So I'm gonna just put double acting cylinders on stuff now like this is, but you know, without the vent. So there'll be 2 hydraulic hoses on it because the ends of these seal up pretty tight, and it's not an environment that's conducive to rust because life is too short to stick a new one of those on here every single year.
So I later found out, as I was thinking about the design of this mower, that the hydraulic system that you're looking at here isn't even necessary in the first place. Okay, all it does is it folds up the deck so that the combined tractor and mower is a little bit shorter when it's going down the road. But a lot of people, most people probably don't even need that. Okay, if you're in a situation where you don't really do much road travel, you know, the fields are around where you immediately live, or if you're like me and you normally transport this thing coupled to the tractor together on a big gooseneck trailer, then yeah, you don't even need that hydraulic setup. I later found out that was a dealer installed option, and the dealers pretty much just automatically put them on there to make the product cost more for the end user when they buy it. You know, you got to understand, equipment dealers are predatory. There's just no other way to put it. All they care about is their own income. They have absolutely zero regard for what's best for the customer. And anything like that, which they can just kind of add on and make somebody pay for, regardless of if they need it or not, or regardless if they even want it or not. That's just what they do by default. So yeah, probably 9 out of 10 users of these type of mowers, you know, that could just be replaced by a piece of chain or something. It would never break, and you wouldn't even be missing out on anything.
All right, bale spear time. Basically, this I built a couple years ago. I made it out of old axles welded together, and I built this frame for it and stuck it on one of those skid steer quick attach plates you can buy really cheap and stick on a tractor or whatever. And it's just a lot more weight than it was ever designed for. And you can see the spear bent. I needed to get it through the week basically to get that hay sold, so I did this little splice job on here. But basically, I figured out recently since then, where did I even set that thing? You can buy store-bought bale spears. They have a nice little tapered mount. And so essentially what we need to do is stick that on here and weld it in place. Do I regret building this? Not really, because I was kind of hard up for money when I did. But it's definitely better if you can spend that roughly $100 on a proper store-bought bale spear, or internet bought in my case. Because that way it's replaceable. You don't have to cut stuff, you just unbolt it and pop it out. So let's stick that together real quick. All right, check it out. I got this in place. I'm pretty happy with how this came out, especially considering it's a rush job because I need it like now. Basically, the way this works, you got your bale spear here, and it's nice and tapered. It has a much longer taper than what was on here, so I'm hoping it'll stab into bales easier, because with the other one, sometimes you shove it and it scoots the bale across the ground, which isn't good for, you know, the net wrap on the outside of it. So hopefully this will just push right in a little better. And then there's this section right here. This came with it, and essentially all I did is I made a couple of half-inch plates. I welded all this together, and then I stuck it together. I put some anti-seize on the bale spear in case this gets bent or damaged. That way it's not like rusted to the tapered section here. And then I secured that rear nut with some Loctite, so hopefully it won't come off. I'm cautiously optimistic. You know, really all the weight that this thing takes is like an up and down kind of deal, and this is tied directly into the frame on this. So it should be okay. I guess there's really just one way to find out. I will say this looks a lot better than the thing I made with the axles. If I had to make another one of these, I would just buy the bale spear like straight up. Either I didn't know you could do that or I was trying to save some money. I can't remember. But the thing that did work out just fine is this lower spear. This isn't really made to take any weight. It's basically just a stabilizer, because unless you stab the bale dead center, it's gonna like roll. This keeps that from happening. That is perfectly fine to use an axle on. But this, no regrets about spending whatever it costs, roughly $100 for that. I hope this works. It was still so hot when I put it together that some of that never sees is like turned to liquid and it's dripping out a little bit. But man, that looks, I think that even looks a lot better than the old one. You know, the old one was fine for what I made it for, and then I overloaded it and bent it. Some people said it was gonna bend inevitably. I guess it turned out they were right, but you know, whatever. Man, I even got that pretty straight on there. Took a couple tries, what with adjusting the tacks, but cannot complain. All right, let's get this loaded up and move some hay.